Thank you, Chris. And this is an awesome opportunity for just the Apostolic Grace to be able to just share insight into our questions. And so I've broken them up into 3 kind of sections. We've got some elder questions, elder wives questions, and then some theological questions, which Jonathan said Euan, you're answering all of them. And there's one question that's an icebreaker, I think would be a good icebreaker to have. There are other questions that are on the side that either number one, I couldn't read the writing, or and I'm only joking, I could read it, but the main reason is that there's a lot of questions here, and I want to give some room and some space for some spontaneous on-the-spot questions if something sparks up as well. So just this question as an icebreaker to go through all of you very quickly. So just a brief answer. If finances, leaders, buildings, obstacles weren't there, so you had all the finances, all the leaders you can have and buildings, what would you love to see in the future? What's your dream?
What would be great would be no elephants in the room.
It'd be great if we hear from each couple quickly on that.
I think a huge stadium with a massive light show and PA speaker for amazing worship gigs that aren't 412 at all.
Cut that one out. No, I'm joking.
Yeah. I have everything I need. Yeah. When we did the love languages, or I did the love languages today, I forgot to say that I have a 6th love language. And so mine is don't be complicated. So if I could pay people not to be complicated, that would just make me so happy.
Awesome. And so let's dive into just some of the elder questions. And one of the questions is, where do leaders get their pastoral care? How does a leader know when they need pastoral care?
I'll let a non-lead elder answer that one. So, Euan.
Yeah. I think probably the first sign to me that a leader needs pastoral care is when you start finding people irritating. I think as soon as you are starting to find pastoral issues, however complex they are, however offensive people can be, we are to love people like Jesus. And I think that is probably where we need to start thinking about rest. And I think one thing Jonathan's modeled very well and even helped the team with is when he senses that we are at the end of our tethers or maybe pre-burnout stage, it's important to start getting time out. Recently, I think a number of us have had sabbaticals. But one thing I think that's very important for leaders is you also need to take time out to process hurts, process things that have happened to you. And that was one of the areas that I found very surprising, actually, things that we've maybe gone through over years of ministry, is that there were things that were still unprocessed fully from maybe year 3 of ministry, because you just don't have time. You come back into the flow of ministry, you start getting back into the day-to-day routine, and you don't actually speak to people about the things that have wounded you or the scars that you bear. And so I would say that even having guys like Tamara in our church is super helpful, because there's somebody that we can go to outside the pastoral team, although of course she's a crucial part of pastoral care, or a Liz and Andrew East, where we can receive that care. But then, of course, within the team, accountability. That's the beauty of working on a plurality of eldership, is that you're not on your own in ministry. And I think when we start to really struggle to pastor well is when you go into Elijah mode and you're lying down under the broom bush, you're tired, you're burnt out, you're depressed, and you think you're the only one doing what you're doing, and you're not. There's 7,000 others. So have a cake, have a sleep, and you'll be fine in the morning. But do share. I think a key thing is sharing the issues that we're experiencing. I think a burden shared is not halved. It's just dealt with so much more easily. when you do it as part of a team.
Thank you so much, Euan. And at any point for the questions, if any of you want to chime in, just feel free to ask for the mic.
Just want to say one thing on that is, we're part of 412 for a reason. And there's always an apostolic voice or a brother or sister in our partnership to speak to. And I think it's one of the sad things is if we don't find out about someone struggling until they reach burnout, because it's very easy to connect on video call or pick up the phone or voice message. And I know that these guys are like super responsive if someone drops a message. So it's one of the benefits of being in a partnership of churches is that is available, and it's on us if we don't use it. So that would just be one additional thing I would say, yeah.
Very good. And Euan mentioned something about identifying the need for rest, and I'm not sure, from what I know of you, this question is for you, but this question says, how many hours sleep does a leader need each day?
Yeah. So I think it's related to the first question anyway. Any team leader like me needs to kind of see your responsibility is to watch out for the team. So even if it means the elephant in the room, you're not taking your day off. It sounds legalistic, but I have to address that, Or for some people, hey, you're taking 5 days off, Yeah. But you're not taking your day off is a kind of starting point. I mean, in the Big Ten, as well as adultery, there's 1 day in 7. That's how we are wired. Yeah, and I wouldn't know how much sleep I think we are all different, yes. But I think, I don't know if you can answer that question. I think we're all different. So Euan can probably do 4 hours sleep. Yeah, that's what he thinks. Yeah, and I need, as an old man, about 8 hours sleep, yes. So, but I think we all need to be looking out for one another. And in our team, it has been difficult conversations because some are workaholics. We've all been workaholics. And we need, like I would say, is Gussie here? So like accountability. Gussie, when did you last take holidays? No, that was the question I said. And do you think it's fair for your wife to be looking after the kids in the October half term whilst you work? You need to take a holiday actually to help your wife. So those types of difficult conversations, of balance and rest. And he did actually go on holiday, didn't you? Yes, he went. Well done, Goosey, yes. But sometimes it does come, that maybe sounds unfair, just picking him out, but it could be any team, almost any team member. But I think we need to care enough. That's an elephant in the room. Let's kind of call it out, yeah. So sabbaticals are good, day off. And even don't just focus on staff. Like you have double timers. So let's try not to load the diary. Like I think we generally serve 2 to 3 nights a week max. Okay? So in this room, I probably have the greatest responsibility in theory, but we serve 2 to 3 nights a week in max. And so I'm trying to get our double timers to think that way as well. Yeah, so I need to I'll just caution myself and the team. We often can just think about people who are on staff, but the majority of leaders in the church are double timers. So how do you do 2 to 3 nights a week? Without how does somebody do American President and play golf every day? They don't. They do, they do, but you understand what I'm saying? That we kind of think I've got this responsibility. You don't have the nuclear codes. Don't even think about that for January. Yeah, you don't, yet people can have time off with huge responsibilities. So, and if you need, just get help. I don't know what the question was, but there was something there.
It was around sleep, but I think you hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think with this, you mentioned about the elephant in the room, and so I'll probably start with Peter for this question. What do you do when you try and deal with the elephant in the room and it is not received well? So offense is taken, anger is displayed, and a wall is put up.
I think I won't stop till the issue is solved. So I think I will go back, or I think for me it's very difficult to leave things open and unsolved. So I think I will try to do anything what I can do to solve it as good as I can. So for me, it's an open issue. It's for me very difficult. I want to go as soon as I can to solve it and try to go the lowest way. If I didn't do right, I want to come humble, try to open the hearts again, to have a conversation again, so that we can deal with it. Because my concern is always that it will cripple into the church, and also in my personality type, I don't like conflicts. Or I like it actually in a way, but not to make conflicts, but I like when there is an issue to go into it. So that's not something I'll run away from. But I think we as leaders need to be proactive in and do anything what we can to find unity again, because I think unity is the most precious what you can have in a church. When there is no unity, there is no blessing. So I think as a leader, my aim is always to find for unity, and when there is an issue, there is no unity. So I will fight I will make my agenda empty, because for me is unity, I think, after Jesus, priority one.
That's great.
I just want to go back to this morning and this morning's message. And sometimes I think we can have a Messiah complex, as in we think we have to be the one to go in and deal with it. And often there's wisdom in thinking who is best placed on the team or amongst the leaders we know to speak to this person. Because if we go in first, really there's nowhere to go after that. But if we'd look at the Matthew 18 type model, and someone goes in who maybe has a wisdom or has a grace or has a relational connection with the person that they're confronting or speaking to, then if it does go sideways, there is another option. And maybe you can bring in the elders, or a 2-to-1. And so just building on that sense of it doesn't have to be you. And often there are other people. I can think of an issue we had recently where it looked like it was going to be a really difficult conversation. Actually, it was in Douglas AM. And one of the deacons actually went and had the conversation, and they were able to navigate what was going to be a very difficult conversation, and actually enabled everyone to move forward. And we still had room to potentially go somewhere else if it had not worked out. So yeah, that's just another thought.
Just one short addition. I think that sorry should be a word that is on the lips of leaders. It's very easy sometimes to take the high ground because you feel that scripture and principle supports you. But I think as Paul says in 1 Corinthians 7, sometimes it is just rather be wronged. Sometimes it's better just to be wronged and to be humble, say sorry. And then I think in communication as well, sometimes where things tend to go sour is there are some issues in the church that can't be resolved in the first meeting. They take time. Sometimes things are said that are very sore in the heat of the moment and offend each other, and there needs to be periods of reflection as well. But I think in those gaps, that's so often where the enemy comes in and starts to twist what was said in the previous meeting. And I think one thing Jonathan has trained us well to do is that when we have difficult meetings, we summarize what was said in the meeting, and then we send it to the person in an email and say, can you just confirm this is what we said to you? And if they come back and they say yes, and then in the next meeting they say, well, that's not what you said, we say, well, hang on, this is the summary, this is what we agreed was spoken. But I think it's also important when there is a delay in the resolution of a problem just to explain to the person, look, I need time to reflect before I come back to you. I will come back to you by Wednesday. I can't do it today, but I will come back to you, and make clear expectations so that people don't take offense when they don't hear from you in 1 or 2 days, because so often it's amazing how quickly the heart hardens in situations that are not quickly resolved.
Very good. I have one more question, and then want to ask the wives some question, and husbands can input as well. But it's, what do you do when your personality doesn't get on well with another member of your team? There's no bad blood or arguments, just two very different people.
It's for the wives.
It's for the wives. Oh, it's in there. That's quite it. This is the last one.
We are people who are permanently changing. So, as I've said recently, there's somebody, okay, well, I know I'm going to have to change, but you're going to have to change as well. So I think we need to be aware that we're all changing. And like how I'm leading a team, like I shared this morning, it's changing, and hopefully my personality is changing as well. So I don't think we can say it's my way or the highway, your personality, our personality. But I think I've chatted with some people recently, about character. I chatted, character, competency, chemistry, calling, and there is a chemistry thing. But in the kingdom, we can't just say, oh, we don't have chemistry, so you're not in my team, In the kingdom, we're continually changing.
Yeah, I think also the people in the team that don't like or that are not like you the most are the guys that are shaping your character the most. So I think it makes me aware that we are all different and I can learn from others. I think recently I had a discussion with somebody in the church, and I was sure that I was right, but that other person as well. And then you are stuck. And I knew if I knew that person is not going to change his opinion, and it was not a sin; it was just a different perspective. And I felt like in my personality, I am somebody. If I hold, I never let go. But I knew if I hold now, it will create disunity. So I choose for the sake of unity to let my opinion go. And that's difficult for me because I am a person with a strong opinion. But I knew if I now, somebody was coughing. Oh, that was a surprise for you, yeah. But I knew if I hold on to my opinion now, it will damage the relationship. And I felt that the Lord said to me, it's now time to let your opinion go. Even, I think the Lord knew that I was right, but... Kidding. No, but I'm kidding. But for the sake, I think sometimes we have to let our rights and opinions down for the sake of the unity. Sometimes we have to choose our battles. Being right, even if you know for sure that you're right. It can happen that and I think you can know for sure that you're right, even if you are wrong, because it's your opinion. You see it like that. But if you feel like, oh, this is create or damaging a relationship, you have a choice, like to leave it, and to love each other. And I think as leader, we have, I think, the responsibility more than the saints, because as leader we carry responsibility for the church. So we need to be the first one to drop our opinions and to and it makes you humble, It's looking to the bigger picture. It's actually the proof. Are you busy with your own opinion, your own rights, or can you see the bigger picture? I think we always should look to the bigger picture, and that's Jesus and the church and the unity. And yeah, sometimes we have to, but that's a hard one for me. But
yeah, very good. And I have a few questions for the wives, but it'd be good to hear from the wife's perspective on that same question. How do you navigate being on team with people with different personalities?
I think, Jonathan, spoke a little bit about that this morning, about how he already knows that, he needs to keep certain elders closer and needs to let them process. And so you get to know each other's characters and how. And I think a long time ago we did like a strength finder thing, and it really opened up, that we're all made differently. God's created us all differently. And so we react to differently to different things. And so I think it is just that love and patience with each other and learning who each one of us are, as a team, but always wanting to keep that unity. So you're always already, what we said, already you're always wanting to say sorry, or you're always wanting to humble yourself. And it's not you being right, it's actually the unity of the team. Yeah.
Thank you. And the question I have is, the role of elder's wife isn't discussed in Scripture, so what is it?
You're brave.
I often kind of joke that for lady deacons, you've got your kind of list of characteristics, but the elder's wife, we're just but ones, because we're just told like the elder has to be a man of but one wife. So I'm a but one, but I think honestly, I did speak once to a lady who is married to a minister in a different denomination, and she asked me, she said, how do you cope with it? Because my husband was called into this, I wasn't. And I couldn't relate to that, because for us, it's so important that it's not Euan who's been called into eldership. It's actually us as a couple who've been called in. Euan's the elder, obviously, but we as a couple are called in. So actually my primary function, same as Eve, is to be a helpmate and to help Euan in every way that I can. And then I think the secondary function is we just use our gifts like every other saint. We've got gifts that we're going to bring to serve the church, and that's going to look different from Carole to me to Annette to Eefje. We're all different. And as long as we're using them in submission to the elders, then God hopefully will bless us.
I've been asked this a lot, actually, when we visit churches, and the women always say, so what's my role? And I'm really sort of echoing what Karen has said, but it is this thing that you are supporting the elder to do the elder's job. You want your husband to serve well to the church. And so primarily, I would serve Chris in whatever way possible for him to be the best elder he can be to Living Hope. And as Karen, so that is the first. And yeah, we do all look different because we use the giftings that we've been given. So we will operate differently. So an elder's wife all of them operate differently in whatever field that Christ has put them in. And so there can never be any comparison between elders' wives, which I think there has been when I've gone to other churches. I've seen they're all trying to work out together. So what do we do? How do we operate? How we work? And they feel that they have to make a team for themselves as elders' wives, and they have to make something and create something. But I don't think that's what the Lord asks of us. It's more we're serving and helping and supporting the elders to lead the church, and in that then we will use our own giftings as Christ has given us to build the church.
I really do want to kind of stick with the wives, but just because of the one thing that you said, I'm kind of going to move to the husbands and come back. But this question is, how can you as an elder ensure your wife still flourishes and doesn't simply become supplementary to your ministry?
Go on, Chris.
Well, yeah, I'll share on that tomorrow. Yeah, I do think there's some scriptural things that can help us in this, which in all seriousness, if I am going to share tomorrow, I probably will share a little bit on it. But I think the key to it is in the one flesh. You know, the way the Bible describes a marriage as one flesh. So in a way, it's not a separation of things where, okay, how can my wife help me flourish? And how can I help her flourish? Actually, there's an alignment between us. And when we flourish, she flourishes, and I flourish. And so there is differences, of course, but at the same time, if you approach it separately, you're actually missing the very heart of what God has done in marriage, which is creating this beautiful unity of one flesh. So, you know, I'm rejoicing when she rejoices, I'm sorrowful when she's sorrowful, and vice versa. And in that, I think you unlock the giftings between you. So,
is there one more perspective on that, and then we'll come back to the wives?
I think often is it that we feel that the role of the wife is like second job, or what was what you mentioned, like
supplement?
Yeah, is it only supplemental? So that it sounds to me that it's so. Is it only that? And I think for me to have Eefje as my helper, I don't know how to do it without her. You know, we are one, and her calling is to run next to me and to help me. And for me it feels like if the Lord take her from me, I think, Lord, how am I going to fulfill this calling? And it's not that my calling is based on Eefje, but we are one. You know, if she plays her role well, I'm flourishing, and I think if I do my role well, she is flourishing. I think we cannot. It's not. I think in the Trinity, the Holy Spirit is the helper. So that's not like, oh, it's the Holy Spirit, you know, it's a secondary role. No, it's a very vital role. And I think women are very vital. Eefje is very vital in my marriage, but I think women are very vital in the church. Prophetic, so many, it's only the leadership. And I think in the Western context or in the world, it's actually the head, it's the number one, you know, but in the kingdom, it's like we have to lay down our lives for our wives, you know. So I think there is nothing we are equal, you know. It's a different role, and I think we have to embrace the role of the women and not thinking like, oh, that's one is better than the other.
Very good. And as you were speaking, it isn't just about our wives help us. It's our wives are needed on the team. For us, you know, so I'm just thinking we had a day away as leading couples of congregations a couple of Tuesdays ago, and it was just like Grace, who doesn't say anything, you know. Suddenly she spoke up, and it was like revelation. It was revelation. So we need to do what she said there. You know, suddenly she said, or I remember one time we were having a couples meeting in the evening, and the guys in the morning decided, okay, all these new interns, we'll place them here. I know we should discuss it with our wives tonight, but we'll just make the decision this morning, right? And then we got to the meeting and we said in the meeting, okay, this is what we have decided this morning. And then we realized we've got all these wrong, you know? So it isn't just to help me. We need elders' wives, we need prophetesses, we need everybody, we need all the voices. Obviously, ultimately, the husband has a responsibility in the home and in the church, ultimately, but we're one, yeah.
Very good. And I want to come to Eefje for this question to begin with. And it's, what are some of the ways you can cultivate unity amongst the elders' wives?
So what we do, we often meet with the elders' wives. We see them every week, every once a week. We speak with them. I walk with them. I ask how they are doing. I just invest and be a friend of them and spend time with them. And they know they can always come to me when they struggle with things, and we discuss it and we help them. I give them perspective, and that's how we really work to unity. And we try to meet once a month with each other, with all the ladies together, so they also have their own little group that they can share their hearts, because you can't share always your struggles with with other people. So that's the place that we spend time also to share our hearts.
So the next question is top tips for keeping your marriage healthy amongst elephants, travel, church demands, people. How to keep your family in the diary. you guys are diving into Chris's preach tomorrow.
The boring word of communication, basically. I think you've got to talk so much through. So you've got to talk about the man's job, what he's been doing, what he's planning to do, and you've got to talk about what the wife is doing and what she's planning to do. You just need to be communicating diaries. You've got to do everything in communication to prevent any sort of possible frictions, disappointments, or misfiring, misunderstanding. And within all that, it's basically finding the opportunities and the moments where it is just you as your marriage and nothing else.
I think for elders, it's crucial that we remember we are actually called to govern the church. And it's very easy for a husband. We do need perspective of wives always, but sometimes I think we can overexpose our wives to what's happening in church life, where actually we need to be processing with the eldership team and leaning into the guys that God has put us into plurality with and saying, guys, what is your perspective on this? How do we process this together? Because I think one of the things that is so crushing for any person is when they are trying to carry a load that's not meant for their lane. And so I think just having sensitivity to what you share. I don't share everything with Kaz. There are things I process in the church with other men in the church and even with other families in the church that I don't believe are for her to carry. But obviously when perspective is needed, that is essential, that there's got to be a balance in the exposure. If she doesn't feel involved, she doesn't feel a part of what the Lord has called us to. But if she's over-involved in certain aspects of ministry, that can be damaging as well. So I think it's having wisdom to know what elders are there to process and govern and what your wives are there to give perspective and carry to some degree with you. So just having wisdom around that, I think, is key.
I think also when it comes to kids as well, because I think that was about the whole family, wasn't it? I think it's really important, boundaries, and I'm not always as good at this as I should be, but actually knowing that after a certain time at night, I'm not going to be looking at my phone and answering messages, that Monday is absolutely sacrosanct, that I'm not going to be, that we're there completely for our family, so that they know that that is their time. And I think because we've started traveling quite a lot as well, it's good for the kids to realize that, it's not just, the sacrifice is not just ours when we travel, but part of the joy of us being able to go and minister in the nations is them having the privilege actually to let us go. And actually what's been incredible is just to see how our big ones are grown up now, but how the whole village to raise a child has come into play, and how amazing it's been for our kids to actually be looked after by other people as well. Mainly Lorraine looking at you, kid. But it's awesome because we've got family who love them and they're able to show that love for them, and that then shows love for us as well. But I think it's just, you've said as well, just that communication and just continuing to reassure our kids.
Just very quickly, one of the things I admire about Kaz in their family, about how they hold unity together, is she has a fantastic stock of dad jokes. And so there's always laughter in their house. Yeah.
That doesn't help all of us.
Yeah, so I think 412, just that partnership, and as we said earlier, it's not about 412, but just the churches we're working with, Andrew's Grace, about prioritizing family and we need to put action with our words, because often, people, we can talk about, I'll be talking about this tomorrow, and often we can say it from the front, but is the reality. So I'll be on this tomorrow. But things like, are your kids with you or were you with the kids? So our kids are with us, So if we're traveling the world where possible, and, even here, some of the guys have helped finance for our kids to travel with us. The church can't don't finance kids to travel, but making sure our kids can come with us is key. That's where they've really changed. They've experienced the goodness of God for themselves. And then I think the other thing, I mean, if you're in pastoral ministry, you've got problems all the time. So we never at the dinner table talk about anybody or church problems. They know we've got problems, but we're never going to discuss those things.
Very good. Okay. And we've got 15 minutes left. I've got some theological questions here. And if there are no questions, then I can dive through them if there's any pauses. But if someone has a question that maybe hasn't been tackled or it's been stemmed from anything that's been shared, just feel free to raise your hand and I'll run the mic to you and we can ask that question. So is there any questions at this time? Okay, feel free to put your hand up at any point. The question that came there is, how do those recognized as apostolic graces in the church see, raise up, and release more apostolic graces in the church? It appears a hard job.
Andrew always tells a story of a certain church denomination that rediscovered fivefold ministry, and so everybody on the board give themselves, well, obviously, you're the apostle, you're the prophet, you're the pastor, you're the teacher, you're evangelist. Give them the title. So what you're talking about is a grace. That's what the Bible talks about. According to the grace given to me, Paul says. So it's a grace, an anointing of the Holy Spirit. So I think like eldership, you don't make somebody an elder because you need more elders. You make them an elder because they're doing it. Yeah. Or you have given them opportunity to start to do it and they're starting to flourish in that. And I think generally, and the guys can share, I'll just share one last thing. I think the biggest thing that I've learned is just to call it out of people. You know, like the first time I met Peter, I said to Andrew, there's an apostolic grace on him. And then, okay, how are we going to pull that out of him more? Euan had never preached. Yeah, no, Euan had never preached before coming to the Isle of Man. Right. So you're calling it out of them. You see it, you're calling it out, you're giving opportunity. And then he preaches better than me now. Yeah. Well, so some people say. Yeah. So yeah, you know, so yeah. So I think it's calling it out. That's what I can see you do. And I think for me, that's the biggest thing. That means you're taking risks and things. We're going to make some changes, you know, vision leaks. We're going to make some significant changes in some of our congregations next year, you know, and so it's actually calling it out of some people. I think you could lead a congregation. Yeah. I think you're going to have to lead it differently, you know, but I think you can. So I think speaking life, speaking faith, giving people a responsibility. And if they mess up, you know, hopefully you're wise not to let them mess up too big, too quick. But if they mess up, okay, well, hey, we all mess up, don't we? So that's Humpty Dumpty, put it back, we can put this one back together again. That's a few things from me, but others will have stuff here.
I think one of the things, and Ash will have experienced this recently, is traveling with somebody who is ministering as an apostle. So Ash recently has been out on the road, I think, with Andrew. And very often the conversations that take place, the way that we see these men minister amongst the churches is such a helpful way to start to fan into flame the grace that God has put into your own life. The same with Jonathan, obviously, working with Jonathan now for 15 years. You see the grace that's on his life, and it does catch. We reproduce after our own kind. So I think exposure to apostles, to the grace that they carry, is a crucial way for us to even grow into our own graces, and then being released with care for us as well, that we're not going into churches and damaging churches, but we're having feedback. How did that meeting go? How did you find the gathering that you preached at? How was this eldership couple that you've been ministering to? And constant feedback telling us how to grow in our own grace has been a crucial way to raise up others. But I think, as Jonathan says, the calling out is the crucial thing, because you can't see it yourself. It's like, you know, when you become an elder in a church, it has to be recognized. We're not just saying, oh, he's a good servant of the house. No, we're recognizing the grace on the person's life, and we're recognizing that they're going to walk in that office. And if you take Pete Wood, for instance, he was terribly disobedient when I saw the eldership on him, and it took nearly a decade to bring him on as an elder because he was just so naughty. But it was so apparent over his life, and he's become a wonderful member of the team. So I think exposure, walking together, seeing what the apostles do, feedback, modeling, reproduction, these things are crucial for apostolic grace to grow.
And then I think one of the most powerful things that Paul says, I think, to the Thessalonian church, he says, you know how I lived among you. You saw what I did. And one of the things I think I've heard on the team is you need to look over a man's shoulder to see what he has built. And, you know, it talks about master builder is a trait. And in any of the gifts, in the prophetic, in evangelism, in apostolic, in teaching, whatever, looking over a man's shoulder, you're seeing a grace on him already where he is working. And then you're calling that out. As Euan says, you may not recognize it. But I think one of the great problems with the term apostle in the church generally, globally, is people just give themselves the title, Apostle Fred or Apostle whatever it is. But actually the whole point is they've built something that is a great flow of grace, that then you're coming in behind that flow of grace and calling them out. So you always want to see the fruit of the gift before you call it out.
Very good. Thank you so much. And we have time for one more question. If I don't have one from the congregation, then I'll ask this final question. Are there any questions at this time? We still got everyone here, yeah? You guys just in deep thought, or it's just been a long day on the Isle of Man? It's good. All right, the final question, to get you guys even more awake, is same-sex attraction. How do we disciple in New Testament context? That got everyone's attention now, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay. So everything related to same-sex attraction and related issues, it's nothing new under the sun. You know, I think when Philip meets the Ethiopian eunuch, you know, and and he baptizes him and everything. I mean, that's a complicated situation. But the way of Jesus is disciple people. You know, so I think what we want to do too often is, you know, like you're catching fish before you land it. You know, you kind of land the fish on the harbor or on the boat, but we want to, you know, gut, fillet, and have them all ready, you know, and bring them on when they're gutted and fillet. So it is discipleship. And so what better place to help people experience the love of God and to move forward in the ways of God. So I'm sure that most of our congregations have people who, I mean, let's not fight over language, who would say they're same-sex attracted, okay? And we are here to walk, whether you've got an anger issue, whether you've got a gossip issue, whether you have an alcohol issue, whatever, we've all got issues that aren't reflecting Jesus well, then we want to help people move into wholeness from their brokenness. That's what the church is here for. Obviously, it's an issue that legally you can't even really talk about publicly, if that makes sense. So I'm being careful even here. Legally, you can't say certain things publicly, but I would encourage you, in the life of our congregations, we're helping people to become more like Jesus. So from the beginning, God loves you just the way you are, but he refuses to leave you that way. He wants to make you just like Jesus. And so perhaps given the culture we're in today, it is a little bit harder to do some things, but it is our calling. And a great little book I've given to most of our lead elders at the moment is by a lady called Rebecca McLaughlin. What does the Bible teach about same-sex relationships? She grew up same-sex attracted. And is a theologian in a complementarian church. That's her theology is complementarian like us, but she's a theologian as well. And she writes so well. Coming from that background, she's married with kids now, but would say even in her marriage, she would say that, I mean, if I have ever been tempted, it's not actually with the opposite sex. It's, you know. And from her position of wholeness in Jesus, I think she writes so well. A great little book, Rebecca McLaughlin. So we need to walk alongside. I'm doing that every week, walking alongside people, helping them become more like Jesus. And people that are walking alongside me as a heterosexual male, helping me to become more like Jesus and to live in a way that honors Jesus. Yeah.
I think one of the things that we must remember is there's so much opinion in the world today on sexuality and identity, and we're not actually discipling people towards opinions, we're discipling people into truth. So there must be agreement with people who are struggling in this area that we are aiming for the same thing, that our view of what Jesus says on the issue is what we believe the Bible says. And I think until we have agreement scripturally, it's very difficult to move people physically. And so very important to open a culture of conversation where a person feels safe to come and talk. I think that historically one of the things that the church has done very badly is that we have weaponized people who are struggling in these areas with the language that we even use flippantly in our day-to-day conversations. And so what happens is people who are really wrestling in the church family feel, I cannot talk about this because I hear the way that people flippantly talk about people like me. And so it doesn't feel like a safe environment. In fact, the church and Christian family are the two hardest places for SSA people to speak about what's happening, and they should be the two safest places where a person feels I can open up and I can talk to mum and dad, I can talk to my church family about what's happening, because we love you and we want to see you come into truth, because it is the truth that sets us free. So I think even in the way we talk, we have to be so careful in the language that we use that people understand. Now, you will not receive judgment here, you'll receive truth, but you will be loved in truth as well.
Thank you so much. Were you guys blessed by this time? Thank you so much for your perspective.